So earlier this year, I made a really big change in my studio. I had used the same audio interfaces for nearly 10 years now. And I made the decision at the start of this year that I was going to try something different, and I switched over to the Audient EVO16. So at the start of this year, I made a video showing you how you can get started with this interface, how to set it up, and how to start with home recording if you've never done that before. That's linked in the top corner if you want to check that video out. Now in this video today, I'm going to be showing you how the EVO16 works for me in my setup, and just talking a little bit about my experience with it over the last couple of months. So the EVO16 is actually, if you've watched my original video, still in exactly the same place on top of my desk. So I currently have no real plans to move it. I'm quite happy with it being there. I quite like the way it looks, just kind of sat on the top shelf of my desk. I did plan to rack mount it at some point, but I am quite happy with the way it looks being there. So for the time being, it will stay there. So before I show you how I've got this thing set up and what I'm using it for and how it's improved my workflow, I want to let you guys know this is not a sponsored video today. The guys at Audient aren't paying me to make this video, but they did provide me with the EVO16 at the start of this year for the original video I made plus this video. But as always, all the thoughts and opinions in the video are my own. So I'm using the EVO16 with all 8 of the inputs doing different things. Now the whole purpose for this is really just to make my life a little bit easier and make my workflow a little bit smoother. So the first thing is on the front of the unit, there are 2 cables going in. Now I've got an 8-way multi-core running to this, as well as a couple of other different cables. So this has a bunch of different things in my studio all connected at once, with the entire aim being it's really easy for me now to plug things in when I want to. That was the whole idea behind this change, just to make my workflow a bit easier. So the first thing I'm going to take you over to see is where inputs 1 and 2 are going, and that is the 2 notes Torpedo Captor X. So in the back, I have 2 XLR cables, one of which is feeding input 1 of the EVO, and that is the output with the cabinet simulation on. And then the other output is feeding input 2 of the EVO, and that's actually the dry one. So that doesn't have the cabinet simulation enabled, which means I can re-amp or re-cabinet later on if I want to. So I'm taking a feed of an amp without a cabinet that I can change up later on if I wish. The 2 notes Captor X is basically what I'm using for speakers. So anytime you ever see in any of my videos where I'm playing any of these amps, the chances are I'm going through the Captor X in some capacity. Input 3 of the EVO16 is the cab rig output of this Blackstar HT20 Mark III. So even though this amp will be run into the Captor X using the cab sims in there, I've also got an XLR connected to the back of this using the cab sims with this. So again, it's just a different way I can record different tones I can use. Input 4 is kind of doing the same thing, but with the Hughes and Kettner Black Spirit 200. That again has an emulated cabinet output on the back, which is feeding input 4 of the unit. Input 5 is my Helix rack down here. I'm only running the Helix in mono at the moment. I could run it in stereo, but for the time being, I've just got it in mono for no real reason other than that's just how I'm using it. Input 6 is all of this stuff on the desk here. So I've got a cable here which I can patch in this amp sim pedal or any other amp sim pedal that I choose to put here, and whatever pedals I want to put on my desk. I can feed that to input 6, which is at the back of the unit, with a jack cable of some sort. Input 7 is this microphone up here. This is the microphone I'm using when I'm doing all my main talking parts on YouTube. This is a Rode NTG1 microphone, so that's going into input 7. And then finally, input 8 is all the way over here again. Behind here, in this mess of cables, I have the remaining parts of the multi-core, as you can see here. These are used as like an input patch. So if I choose to mic up an amp, or I'm recording an acoustic guitar, or I have a friend over recording some vocals, I've got a place over there that I can patch another XLR cable in, which will feed input 8 at the back of the EVO16. So that is how I've got it set up. So it's 1 and 2 for the wet and dry of the Captor X, 3 for the cab rig of the HT20, 4 for the cabinet emulated out of the Black Spirit, 5 is for the Helix rack, 6 is for whatever I've got on my desk. I've got a couple of different amps and pedals that go there. 7 is for the microphone on top right there. And then 8 is like a wildcard slot for whatever I want to do. So what I will say is, now that I've been using the Evo in this capacity for the last couple of months, I'm very impressed with it. It's actually made my workflow a lot simpler. The auto gain feature on the front that you have here is a godsend. That has made setup times so much easier, especially with things like balancing the wet and dries of the Captor X, or when I'm using multiple different things and I'm kind of plugging between different amps. It really saves me so much time. I'm yet to actually take this thing out of the studio and use it for tracking drums or tracking multiple things at once, but I can obviously see how much of a huge benefit that would be. So all in all, my first 3 months with the Audient EVO16 have been incredibly productive. I am really glad that I made the change, so a big thank you to the guys at Audient for hooking me up with this unit. It's an incredible piece of gear, and it really has made my life a lot easier. If you are setting up a similar home studio like what I've got, this is a great piece of gear because you can connect so many different things to it. And the other thing I plan on doing at some point is getting a patch bay of some sort, so I can patch in some other bits of outboard gear and other things into the system as well. For now, I'm just using it the way that I've described in this video, but there are, limitless things I can do. There's also an extension unit for this where you can get another 8 preamps. So I am thinking about getting my hands on one of those at some point, and then that will allow me to patch things in like an old effects rack unit I've got. And I've got a spring reverb tank that would be quite cool to patch in, as well as a few other cool bits of gear. But yeah, that is my experience with the Audient EVO16. That's how I'm using it in my setup and what it is doing for me. It's made my life so much easier, so much more efficient, and so much quicker. You guys should check it out if you're looking for an interface to speed up your workflow as well. In terms of using it, when you're actually setting it up and using the software to control everything, it's so intuitive, and actually changing routings and kind of creating submixes and everything is just instant. You don't need to read manuals. I've literally figured it out just by clicking things and doing it on the fly. It's been such an intuitive process to learn. So yeah, go check out the Audient EVO16. There's some links down below in the description where you can check this thing out. If you've tried any of the Audient interfaces, I'd love to hear what your opinions are of them, so let me know down below in the comments as well. While you're doing that, don't forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I'll see you guys very soon. Thank you so much for watching as always.